Hello everyone, welcome to the Leadership Retros podcast. I'm Nico, I'm a principal consultant here at StatusNeo. Today we have a wonderful guest, Sachin Mengi, who's the Wealth and Asset Management Sector Leader for EY Global Delivery Services. And we're glad to meet and host him in this podcast and dive deep into very interesting topics about the wealth management, how it's reshaping the industry, and as such, how the global leaders are kind of battling with these new rollouts of AI and strategies to counter, to make all the different strategies work for wealth management context. Over to you, Sachin, and maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell us about it.
Definitely. Thank you, Nico, and StatusNeo for inviting me to this talk. Been in the industry, wealth and asset management for almost entire career I have of 25 years. The focus today for my talk is going to be about the trends we have in the industry, the global trends, yes, and how our clients are navigating through the opportunities and the disruptions they have.
Yes.
And how we as consultants are trying to solve their problems and help them get through this.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's brilliant. I think we can dive deep into further topics, right? So the themes that we have for the podcast. So let's dive deep into key challenges within the industry, right? What do you see as a leader, global leader in the wealth management industry? What are the major challenges within the industry that global delivery and wealth management leaders are facing?
So I think the focus of any industry is always to how to increase the revenue, yeah, and the market share, and also how to optimize the cost and the bottom line, right? So these are definitely challenges for our wealth managers today. But if I have to double click to some specifics, I can think of 4 areas. One is there's too much data, yes, right? Everybody has too much data now, and then to figure out, what are the insights, meaningful business insights we can make out of it is becoming difficult. Second would be, how not to lose customers to the competition. There is a lot of volatility. The expectations of the customer is changing. Customer is becoming more aware of different asset classes, diversification they want to do. So how do you as a wealth manager bring those services sooner to them before they think about moving somewhere else? Third would be how to cater to the next generation, because your current customer base is very different versus our kids and the generation we have, yes, and the upcoming generation. They are very, very digital first. They want less interactions. They want everything real time, very quick services. So how do you cater to that segment? Because once your customer base shifts to the next one, you should be ready for that.
Yes.
And the fourth would be the operational aspects, right? So how do you bring automation? How do you bring AI into your middle office, back office operations so that you can bring optimization in your cost?
Yes. And speaking of, let's say, back-end operations and optimization, right? And given that you mentioned the data problem as a common challenge, I think that's not only a problem for wealth management industry, I think it's a universal problem across industries, right? So how do you see the AI and technology increase working for back-end operations given the data problem for wealth management industry, right? So, and how do you see, let's say, productivity gains or uplifts or upskills in the long term within this change?
Yeah, I think AI, data, all of these are very important words. What we are focused on at the moment is AI-ready data. How do you make sure you have the data which AI can consume first of all?
Yes.
Right. So I think that's the first problem, and some of the wealth managers are already trying to solve it. Some are starting to solve it.
Yes.
But for you to get most benefit of the AI, you have to first fix this problem.
Yes.
Right. So that's where and AI can help you fix that problem also. Right. So.
Yes.
There are ways you can figure out your data lineage, you can consolidate your data into one place, you can figure out your data definitions,
yes,
but you'll have to go through that journey. But now it is very fast. You can bring AI to speed up the journey for that.
Yes.
But let's assume that you have the AI ready data for you. I think post that, the whole analytics world is going to change. It will be more around summarization. right? I don't think anybody is interested to look at dashboards now anymore, right?
Yes.
So you would like to have a nice AI interface which is kind of hooked into all the internal data sources and external data sources and give you a very nice summary of the question you have to ask. So that paradigm shift will also come. But when we talk about wealth managers and high net income people, obviously bringing in the AI features, as the example I talked about rebalancing, would definitely change the game.
Yes, absolutely. I think one more question I would have in terms of the market challenges, right, is that you mentioned competition. And competition is a very key theme, given the technology boom and upscaling and everything else. So how do you see competition in terms of new emerging players in the industry? And what kind of chances, what kind of niches do you think they have compared to well-established players, right, in the industry, in doing the business for, decades? And how would you compare the new emerging players? What kind of pros and cons they have? What kind of, let's say, headwinds and tailwinds they have compared to established players? And if we can also discuss about the market environment and where it's headed in the next 5 to 10 years.
So I'll answer your question in two segments. One is, obviously we're talking about wealth managers here, so how they are competing with each other along with the fintech ecosystem. Second is, how are the consulting firms, right? The tech firms are competing with each other to help in the same market.
Yes.
So going with the first one, in terms of wealth managers, obviously they need to focus a lot on customer retention. They need to focus on money movement. So money movement is a concept where you have to pay a lot of attention as a wealth manager.
Yes.
Where is the money moving for your customer? And how do you follow the trail to be relevant? The other aspects would be your operation side in terms of how would you manage your trade operation? How would you manage your custody operations? Right? So being very vigilant of bringing the best customer service and best portfolio management to your HNIs will be very, very relevant for this competition.
Yes.
Plus, you also have to make sure that there is always a human touch. When we talk about really wealthy people, I know we talk about digitization, but end of the day, the human touch, the trust you have developed with the human is really, really important. So you basically augment your financial advisor with all the technology and the tools he has, which are AI augmented to support the day-to-day operations he has. Fintechs are part of the ecosystem. They are not competition. So more and more big clients are actually integrating with the fintechs, bringing them into their ecosystem. So that they are able to leverage the innovation these companies are bringing.
Now the next question, next theme that needs to be discussed is a front-end operation, right? So we cannot bypass AI, right? We're talking about it many times, but there's two aspects of this. One is the back-end and one is the front-end. I think we have covered most of the back-end operations and how it comes as a challenge and the opportunity. And now, how do you see this technology usage in the front-end operations, given the personalization and other aspects, right? How do you see exactly it's shaping the industry and adhering to the complex need of the clients, wealth management clients?
There are a lot of AI augmented front office use cases we are addressing for our customers. The most prominent one is FA Assist, so Financial Advisor Assist. So imagine there's a financial advisor, but now he has an assistant, which is AI augmented, sitting in his computer or whatever it's using. And while I am having a conversation with the customer, all of that is getting recorded. As meeting notes, as actions, the conversation you and I have, that gets inputted into the portfolio management module. So all of that interaction from a front office perspective is definitely being built today. And it is very much needed to provide a better service. We've also developed a system where the next best action is also recommended based on your and my conversation, just like that. The system will say this is the next best action which needs to be performed. So that's one example of a use case which is on the front office side. Another example would be mostly on the contact center,
Yes.
right? So let's say you now want to talk to somebody in the firm, not as a FA, but you have support required for certain aspects, right? How do you talk to a contact center? You're not going to call anymore, right? So the contact center is also implementing a lot of AI agents, which is able to give very real-time processing information and remediation to our customers. So that's another aspect.
Yes. How do you see digitization, let's say application development or something that supports the front-end operations? I mean, the end clients. And how do you see this augmenting the human touch and the personal touch with the advisor, financial advisor in the process?
Yeah, I think human touch is going to stay.
Yeah.
It's very important. Also from accountability, from ethics point of view, we always need a accountability of a human being.
Yeah.
But this is going to be like a very intelligent superhuman being now.
Yeah.
Right? Who is able to have a very candid conversation with you directly in real time versus saying, okay, John, I will call you after 5 days and I'll tell you my proposal.
Yeah. And in terms of, let's say, customer support, query management, and delivering personalized responses or advices, right? Instead of giving a pre-recorded questions, which was mostly a theme like 5-10 years back, now it's made as a more intelligent brain, like as a customer service, not even a chatbot. I think it's a very intelligent.
Now the customer agent has access to your data.
Yes.
Right? It understands your portfolio history.
Yeah.
It understands that you have called, how many times in the past you have called with your grievances, and it is able to talk to you very empathetically.
Yes.
Like saying, Nico, yes, I think you're facing this problem for the second time, for example. Just bringing the touch to you. Because now the agent knows about that.
Yeah.
And then also has access to entire documentation or the SOPs of the firm in snap of a finger, and it is able to figure out this problem was handled in some other case like this and bring that remedy to you very quickly.
Yeah, as a precedent in other cases.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that, when I'm calling you, I will stay talking to you on the chat window for let's say 15-20 minutes and you will give me a solution. Right now, I chat, you open a ticket, then you say that we'll send you updates on the ticket.
Yes.
Right? And then the process continues to 1 day, 24 hours or whatever it is. Yeah. But I'm assuming with all of these things very interconnected, and it reminds me of the movie which you might have seen, it's called Mercy.
Yeah.
Very interesting, although the concept is very different. It talks about, crime management, etc. But the main role, the AI judge in the movie has access to everything. Like CCTV cameras here, your records, your history, where did you spend your money, etc. So that way, I think the agents will have access to so many things and they can give you remediation very quickly.
Yeah. On this aspect, right, the agentic development and let's say not only on the customer support, but the whole front operations for the client, right? There is some very big advancements with the agentic technology, but there is some constraints as well. One is the cost impact of it, the total cost of ownership as such. One is the, let's say, other constraints like hallucinations and delivering, let's say, some bias in their responses. So how do you see this augmenting the decision making?
Yeah, so I think managing bias is very important. Making sure that you have the guardrails implemented in your agents. Making sure that there is a sense of duty the agent understands, that what it is supposed to do and doesn't cross those boundaries. And these are some of the pertinent questions which we need to solve from a platform perspective when we are implementing AI in our ecosystem. And it is relevant to all the industries. You talk about healthcare and others, even in financial services industry also. We want to make sure that agent is not giving an advice which is like way different, completely paradoxically different, right? We want to make sure there are checks and balances in place. We want to make sure there is a human validation in the entire aspect, right? So managing the ethical aspects, managing the accountability and responsibility, is very important, and that's where when you build the AI ecosystem in your firm, you bring these as infrastructure services to the platform.
Yes, absolutely. What do you see is the common opportunities and common challenges on the stakeholders' desk? Let's say COOs, but not only limited to the COO's desk, to the other stakeholders. How is the people aspect developing? What is the role of the human experience within the firms? And if you can give us also your perspective about the talent acquisition. How is a new talent acquired within those firms? How do they typically try to upskill those people? Because it's a very, very sophisticated and specialized industry.
So to me, it is a centennial movement.
Yeah.
It's a movement which is coming in 100 years.
Yeah.
If you go back in time, we all know about Great Depression, 1929, things changed, industrialization picked up. Workforce was worried about what's going to happen. There was a lull in between where, a lot of jobs were lost, but then things picked up again.
Yeah.
And, everybody had jobs, and also the output of the industry was much higher. We were producing more things as world, right, as industry. So to me, I think we're very much at the same point. There is a different kind of cognitive industrialization which is happening, where, the desk jobs, the research jobs, the thinker's job is being augmented now, right?
Yes.
So same things, I can see same thing happening here. If you are not in the learning and upskilling journey for yourself, yes, industry will not have a space for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure everybody will pick it up,
Yes.
right? Everybody will get upskilled to how to use the AI tools to get their work done.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very much happening in all the segments, right? If you talk about research market right now, everybody is using AI
Mm-hmm.
to figure out, how to structure the research. If you talk about front-end design or design thinking, how do you think about, the product? People are using AI
Yes.
already, right? And then coming to the most talked segment of people is, all the developers, people who are part of the SDLC life cycle.
Yeah.
Everything is shifting left. The BAs in my team are using AI tools to capture notes in the meetings, figure out what stories needs to be created, what is the acceptance criteria. That has become way faster
Yes.
and more accurate.
Yes.
Also, right? Similarly, when it goes to developers, they are writing faster code. They're using tools like Copilot and others to make sure that they're able to quickly churn out the code. So the developer is not thinking about the syntax of the language anymore. He's thinking about the business problem. BA is also thinking of the business problem.
Yes.
Tester is also thinking of the business problem. So I think this is all what we wanted always, that everybody needs to think about the business problem. But in our older model, it was very difficult for us to do it because tester was testing the code which was written, not testing the business problem.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the shift
Whereas the code might not even solve the business problem.
might not even solve the business, and tester is like, code is working because the way code is written, right? So I think all those problems will go away now.
Yes.
It is going to be very left shift. For you to really do well in your growth, etc., you need to understand business now. You need to understand how to use AI tools to get the job done.
Yeah.
And that is very important for everyone to pick it up.
Yeah.
So I would say that, that uplift, and India is in the center of this story. It's well marketed now that India is in forefront of AI adoption, etc. So I would say that, the kind of new talent and the people who graduate from so many colleges and universities we have, they are all very upskilled already.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of campuses and people are using Replit, people are using Claude, even today in campuses, they've started using it.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So I would say that the industry, people who are in the industry are catching up very quickly.
So there are many aspects of, let's say, you mentioned code, you mentioned research and other functions as well. So what I've experienced personally and what I've heard about this from my point of view is that AI can do like first let's call it a first draft or kind of a first outline of what you're about to achieve in terms of code, in terms of research, but then the rest of the 20% of the task, 10 to 20% of the task, it still comes from the experience, and it still comes from a very specialized and sophisticated wedge from the people, right? On this aspect, I think problem solving as a whole, right, becomes way more important. So what would be your comments on this, on the problem solving aspect?
So I see 4 variations of AI, right?
Yeah.
So one is AI does everything and there's no human,
Yeah.
right? Second is human does everything, there's no AI. That's the second paradigm.
2 extremes.
Two extremes, and then you have 80-20 and 20-80 model,
Yeah.
right? So let's think about it, right? So in some use cases it may make sense, right? But I think majority of the cases, AI doing everything, there is no human. I don't think we are there yet,
Yes.
and we are ready to accept that,
Yes.
because there are a lot of questions around accountability and ethics and bias management. Everything needs to be addressed. Human doing 100, that era is over, so we don't want to talk about that. The third is 80-20, which is human does 80% of the work and AI is doing 20% of the touch-up,
Yeah.
right? And the other aspect is where AI is doing 80% of the work and the 20% is the touch-up done by the human. I think that's where the things would land up to be.
And one more thing I would specifically like to ask is about new talent acquisition in the organizations, right? So how do you, so what are the principles and fundamentals for new hires? What are the skills in the era of these technologies and AI and all these things? What are these skills that you're looking for the people that might not have a very specialized industry domain knowledge yet, but how do you kind of speak in terms of where this person is now and where it could be based on all the market developments and all the industry knowledge? And
my traits of hiring somebody who's coming fresh off a college or university stays the same. Even back then, I would focus on communication skills of the person. I would focus on the problem solving skills, and the third would be curiosity. I think that stays same for me. I still would evaluate the person on, is he able to articulate what he or she is trying to say?
Yeah.
That's communication. I would still like to see their problem solving approach. Can they divide the problem? Can they have steps towards solving the problem? Do they have the logical thinking? That is still important. And third is curiosity. Is the person aware of what is happening around?
Yeah.
Right? I know AI is happening around at the moment, so I would expect the person to be aware of, may not be master in things, but at least be aware of what is happening and how it is impacting the person.
Yeah.
So that level of curiosity, self-learning, all of that is still relevant. And once you are in the industry, obviously we'll shape you as we want to shape you.
Yes.
That would follow through.
Given the recent developments, let's say geopolitical movements and everything else which is happening in the industry, how do you see and how do key stakeholders within the firms see this reflecting on the client portfolios on the high level, right? The risk appetite, the liquidity needs, all these aspects for managing, let's say, client portfolios and doing the business of wealth management. And how do you see specifically alternatives and private markets giving, let's say, a new wedge, a new breadth to the wealth management, not only from the returns perspective, but also considering the liquidity profile, the risk profile of the portfolios as such? And where do you think it's headed?
No, definitely. I think there is a shift in the demand. Historically, you would see that the money is going into stocks or bonds, fixed income products. There is a huge change in moving towards alternatives, moving towards private equity investments, moving towards real estate, infrastructure, hedge funds. So people are much more aware and much more conscious of they want to diversify their portfolio. So that is definitely happening. What this means is, as a wealth manager, do you support those asset classes? Right from your business to your technology? And you have to, which means that you have to change, you have to adopt new platforms. which are supporting these assets, or you have to enhance your existing platform. So this change in demand is definitely resulting in the way business has to support the demand, and it means that there is a lot of business transformation, there's a lot of technology transformation agenda which is coming into the picture. So all roles are, CEO has to think about how to handle these new asset classes, CTO has to think about what are the platform I need to bring in to manage a specific, let's say, real estate portfolios, right? They don't have it today. So it is definitely happening, and a lot of wealth managers are figuring out or already in the process to make sure that how do they support these businesses.
And why do you see this demand emerging towards the alternatives in private markets? And how do you see, is it only for the return profile improvement, or how do you see the balance between the returns, liquidity, and other areas of portfolio management as a whole?
I think all of that. So obviously, the most important aspect is diversification. You don't want to put all your eggs in. See, we know that when market crashes, everything crashes. It's not that two stocks have crashed. When there is a geopolitical concern, you'll suddenly see everything dipping in, right? As we can see right now also, as it is happening live in current times. So you want to diversify. So where do you diversify? Okay, government bonds used to be a very attractive proposition, but now there are other things available. You don't have to buy the entire building. You can go for REITs, right? You can invest into real estate. You can invest into infrastructure portfolios, as a segment of it. Private equity option is there. Private credit options are there. So there are more options available, and people are diversifying, and it is giving good results. You are able to hedge your risk. You have better liquidity because one segment is not related to another. And of course, you can kind of balance your returns. If something happening here, you kind of have a balancing act happening on the other side.
And maybe this relates not only to the asset class, because I can see that different stock sectors might not be that correlated, but maybe to diversify even more, putting the assets in other asset classes like bonds and maybe cash equivalents and other assets to balance the client's needs, right?
Yes.
So you spoke about the REITs and other alternative instruments that people are using, and there is certainly a demand for it. And to put it very simply, the idea behind this, as I can understand, is that, for example, you don't have to buy a whole building when you want to invest in real estate. And you can only own, let's say, $5,000 of exposure from a multi-million-dollar building, right?
Yes.
How do you see the market growing from this standpoint? Because it's going to allow other players, let's say, individual or institutional people, to also enter the market, and it's not only going to be high net worth individuals benefiting from this service, but also other people. And how do you see it has an impact on the market development, on the wealth management side?
Definitely, these are mass affluent products where people like you and me can also participate in the growth journey.
Yes.
And that's where we have these fund houses, right? They will kind of bring all this money together and then go towards the investment they want to make, so that it is manageable and there is a method to the madness. But it gives an opportunity to the end customer, not necessarily people are really wealthy to invest into these kind of things, to participate in the growth journey of a certain portfolio.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about decision making as a concept, right? And as we're seeing all this augmentation that is happening with new technology and all this data that is coming our way to make decisions and final call, right? And if we were to categorize, I would say there's two aspects of decision making, two types of decisions. One is the proactive decisions, when you know something is happening and you're doing it proactively. And one is the preventive, right? So there is some kind of a risk, new risk or existing risk, which is growing, or there is a higher chance of occurring and realizing. And what do you do to mitigate this? So where do you see this process in wealth management, and what kind of examples could you give us for both types of decision making, let's say proactive decision making and preventive decision making?
This is a very important concept for a wealth manager. So we have a concept called goal planning. It's very important when I'm trying to manage your wealth, what
Yes.
goals you have in mind. And every individual have different goals based on their life stages. So there are decisions which have to be made, and it kind of goes back to my AI ready data. First you need to have that. And then on top of that data, your AI agents needs to be able to send alerts and notifications at the right time for a financial advisor to act. So you rightly said there are two kinds of major categories of decisions. One is proactive and second is more preventive. So from a proactive perspective, let's say you're a 25-year-old man who is now going through a life event, which means that you're going to get married, let's say.
Yes.
And another 5 years, you'll have children. So your aspirations, your goals would change. As a wealth manager, one way is that you can come and tell me this is happening, and then we make changes. And you may not, most of the time you don't come to me because you're busy with your new life and other things are happening, right? So as a wealth manager, if I am able to generate a very proactive reach out to you, right? And a lot of firms are thinking through this, that how do we make that choice? And there is a lot of material available, a lot of information available on social media also for an AI agent on my side to make that assumption or a decision that this is upcoming, and then I come to you,
Yes.
right? So that will be a very nice value-added service.
Use case.
Value-added service where we can use a decision fabric framework to enhance the experience
Yes.
of our clients. That's a good example on the proactive side. Second would be on preventive side. It is more about, let's say there are external disruptions, right? There are market trends which are happening, which requires me to change or rebalance your portfolio, maybe move out from a certain segment of stocks to more into bonds or more into alternatives based on what is happening outside. If
Yes.
I can get timely alerts generated for those events and I act on that as a financial advisor for you, that is definitely a value-add
Yes.
service and use case. Another preventive one I can think of is creating a emergency fund for you, which is very liquid to handle some eventualities around your health or some other situations in
Yes.
life. So if we are able to preempt that based on your health parameters, based on your fitness schedule, etc.,
Yes.
then we can make those alerts and notifications. So these needs to be very, hyper personalized, have to be very timely,
Yes.
and have to be very, very tech and AI enabled.
Yes.
To bring that decisions to life and to help the customer.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned decision fabric framework that we have introduced in StatusNeo.
Yes.
And this is a framework that, just to quickly introduce this, is a framework that uses technology to vet and validate decision making for key stakeholders,
Yes.
right? So this is part of one aspect of this is the technology aspect. Second one is the human in the loop layer, right? And my next question is on this aspect, human in the loop, and the governance and accountability as such. And what I mean when I say governance is that who gets the credit in the organization when things are going good, and who is accountable for certain metrics, KPIs when things are going bad, right? So what is the governance, development, accountability, and human in the loop as part of the organizations today?
Yeah, I think so that concept is still evolving, as I would say. I don't think anybody has a perfect answer today.
Yes.
But it is definitely a topic to think about and consider. I would bring governance and accountability top down, which is, before I talk about an enterprise, what is the regulation a country is bringing?
Yes.
Right. So as we know that European Union has brought in their AI
Yes.
Act already. India has modified the IT laws to bring accountability from AI perspective.
Yes.
And it will continue to happen in other locations and geographically, right? So I think that's very important because AI is going to be a fundamental part of our life. So having a regulatory framework which can guide other frameworks within the enterprises is very important. Now double clicking on on a particular enterprise and execution, we definitely need an AI constitution, right?
Yes.
Which needs to define who is accountable, who is responsible, and as you rightly said, who gets credit or beating based on something goes wrong or bad. And that has to be industry to industry, and every firm has to figure out on their own. But I would say that the first step would be for all the major economies to bring in regulation about it.
Yes.
And then, because right now, it is still the same. CEO has its own responsibilities and accountability. That hasn't changed. CFO's accountability and responsibility is not changing. CTO's, it's all the same.
Yes.
But will it change is something, a topic for debate. And I don't think anybody has an answer yet.
Yes. And in terms of maturity, right? So AI technology is developing very fast, at a very rapid pace. Every week, every month, we see there is a new rollout of the new AI model or a new framework that acts on our behalf instead of just chatting with us. So how do you see the regulation's capability to catch all these developments that are going on within the AI industry?
Yeah, so I think the regulation should talk about the boundaries of things we cannot cross. For example, we cannot have bias in the system. We cannot have lack of accountability. We cannot have, there needs to be audit history to figure out who did what.
Yes.
Right? And obviously LLM models today, they're doing so much of thinking inside, we don't know the steps which are going through. Is that good or bad? I think for certain segments of the industry, it's not good. Let's say if I talk about healthcare, if I talk about aviation, right? Maybe it's okay for a car manufacturing factory that you can go and roll back few things. But there are certain aspects in certain industries where you cannot compromise on these guardrails, right? Yes. And I would say financial services and wealth management would fit into that. But at the end of the day, we're talking about your hard-earned money. We don't want some, bad events to happen because it will impact you as an individual. So we have to make sure that the bias, the accountability, the ability to audit the steps and the decision framework which you just mentioned about, it is very important to be able to decode why a decision was made.
Yes. And then only after considering these inputs, then we lead to the outcome with AI. Otherwise, there is a massive spend that is going on, either the CapEx programs from companies or OpEx, like direct OpEx after installing, and this is not a software update, right? This is a new generation of enterprises. And there is pretty much direct cost involved in the AI systems and total cost of ownership and everything like this. I just want to ask about a pretty weird paradigm that we're seeing, that large companies are spending a lot of money on the programs of AI initiatives, let's say AI CapEx initiatives or the OpEx initiatives, but they don't see some meaningful returns and meaningful outcomes yet from those systems. Yeah,
that's very true. There's two ways people are thinking AI. One is bolt in, which means I am stitching, I have the same process, but I'm bringing AI augmentation in between here and there. That's a very pragmatic approach, I would say. The second is a little bit more revolutionary, but we need to see the mavericks who do this, is the built-in. So you reimagine your entire process. Right? And then you
start from scratch.
So and the new process assumes there is something called AI available to us, and then you think through the process, right? So, so I think both approaches are still valid. The bigger you are as a firm, you are more into bolt-in mindset. Right? That we want to protect the sanctity of our process because there are compliances, regulatory, obligatory things which I don't think it's a, or I would say, if the smaller fintechs or smaller firms are they can easily pivot to the built-in strategy and reimagine the process.
Absolutely.
So this tussle will continue for a couple of years, I would say. It's not going to change overnight. At least financial services is very cautious about any major changes. So industry will take its own
Path.
Yeah, but I see more bolt-in happening right now in the big corporations.
Yes, and there are certain aspects to this as well.
Yes.
Sure. So one question I would have is with regards to the process that is going on, like SDLC versus PDLC in the organizations. If you can give us your viewpoints on this, like what trends do you see? I mean, I'm not asking about right or wrong. I mean, there's pros and cons to both. But if you can give us your viewpoints on how is reshaping the industry, what is the product, what is the software anymore? I mean, there's a lot of shifts that are going on in the market. So if you can give us
I can share my perspective. I'm sure a lot of people have different answers to this question. And it's good you asked it now because it goes back to again the bolt-in and built-in.
Yes.
Right? So SDLC has a process. You capture requirements, you define stories. If you're following agile methodology, you get into development life cycle. Then you have your testing process, DevOps process to kind of ship the software to production systems. A lot of people are talking about SDLC.ai. So that is again a bolt-in. So all of these steps you have, you put in AI accelerators in between, and you're making your process faster, or the conveyor belt go really fast now.
Augmented.
Yeah, augmented, right? So that's still valid. There are very complex systems out there. Systems which were written 20 years back, has so much of business knowledge, domain knowledge, business rules. You cannot just throw that away, right? You need SDLC.ai to manage those systems.
Yes.
So that's again a bolt-in to me. The built-in is the PDLC, where for a moment you forget SDLC exists. Okay, I will have 3 pods, 3 teams on the floor. I will tell them, and I'll take an example. Let's say I'm a wealth manager and I'm a financial advisor. I want to shift some of your portfolios into IPOs, right? Yes. So for that, I need to know which is good and bad, kind of investments I need to do. And let's assume I don't have that product suite with me today, and I will say, I want an IPO selector. That's all I need to say. And there are 5 teams sitting out there on the floor, not on the same office, remotely, where I am going to give them some brief, small ideas, and I am going to give them 5 days. All of you 5 teams, please build your own product. You don't have to talk to each other.
Yes.
Build what you have, use AI, everything, your thinking, your creativity, bring it to me. Okay? And I am going to choose one of them and purge the 4. Yeah. That's the speed of PDLC I can imagine, which is going to happen in the industry. And then that PDLC is a precursor. So once I've chosen that product, now I have to maintain that product as a life cycle, and I will have to bring in SDLC angle to that product eventually, right? Because that product will have a shelf life, not so long like 20 years. Maybe the product shelf life will be 1 year. And after 1 year, I'll say, no, please redo everything again. This is not valid anymore, or some other use case. So to me, PDLC is going to become a precursor to SDLC, and SDLC will shrink. Shelf life of products will be really small. And with AI, we will have ability to create multiple products, which is solving the same problem, and choose the best one.
Absolutely. So it's not one way or the other. Maybe PDLC accelerates the speed of innovation, so you can choose the best product out of the total offerings.
Yes.
And then SDLC then completes the process of, let's say, development and life cycle of the products.
Chosen product.
Choosing products. Yeah. But the life cycle of these products will be shorter because there will be new
ideas, new innovations.
Yeah, requirements from the end user's perspective, and so on and so forth.
And at some point in time, you will realize, if I have to enhance this system and it's more complicated, let's just chuck it.
Yes.
Okay, let's create now we know the augmented business requirements. So we had version 1.0, we have learned few things version 2.0, let's create a new one.
Yeah, and I think it's a fundamental shift from what enterprises are used to, because a lot of enterprises today are still using legacy systems whose shelf life is like forever. I think from, let's say, 70s or 80s, they're using a lot of systems.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, one size does not fit all, right?
Yes.
So I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah.
right? Because that's the backbone of your enterprise, your middle office, back office systems.
Yeah.
What PDLC, you want to try PDLC more on your front office things, which is your ideas, how you approach the customer, right?
How do you personalize?
How do you shift, personalize? How do you change things so that there's more adoption of your products, etc. That's where you can do plug and play. Like you create something, you destroy, create, destroy,
Yes.
create, destroy, right? But your backbone enterprise systems, I think you spoke a little bit about ERP and others.
Yes.
No, that's
It's going
very
to remain
different. That's a very
space.
different problem. Yeah.
So I think it was a wonderful discussion. And over to you. I mean, if you want to summarize and give us your closing thoughts about the podcast today.
No, Nico, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I completely enjoyed the conversation. It was very free-flowing and natural conversation we had. But the summary I would say is that, as I said, it's a centennial movement. After 100 years, things are fundamentally changing.
Yes.
Things are changing for good. There is going to be a paradigm shift. There may be a pause for a little bit. There may be confusion for some time. But upskilling, up-leveling yourself to the latest tools available in the market, and also, not just boxing yourself to, I'm a developer, versus, you need to become a product person, right?
Or problem solver.
Problem solver. Think about the problem, think about solutions. You have to ideate. Because as I gave the example of PDLC, there may be 5 teams thrown to go and build the same product, right? So you need to get creative about it.
Yes.
And nobody's going to prescribe you, build this, build that.
Yeah. And one more thing is that as in the development of these emerging technologies, the role for, let's say, software engineers or consultants or other roles are increasing instead of diminishing and decreasing, right? Because the CEOs and the key stakeholders are looking it from a broader lens. We mentioned like coding is part of software engineer's job, but if we are looking from a broader sense, it's a problem-solving job. And except coding, there's many tasks that need to be handled, right? So I think it's a very interesting market shift that with the rise of technology, the demand for those roles are going to increase upon the time. Of course, the skills are going to be different, but the demand for it is going to increase.
There is going to be more demand.
Yes.
I can give a small analogy, right? So, building a road. After the bulldozers and these new machinery, JBL, etc. came through, I think we're making more roads, not less roads.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that we just wanted to build 5 roads and then we stop the work. No.
Yes.
Same thing will happen here. We will have to do things faster. There will be more products built, more products shelved, right?
Yes.
And that we have to get used to it because it's a change, unlike what you have today, right? So there will be more innovation, there will be more creativity which is required, and as a developer, you need to be more close to the business, right? You need to wear the business hat. The BA has to be more close to the code now, because
Yes.
he or she can, analyze the code very quickly.
Yes.
So both way, I think, I won't say they will collapse into one person. They will definitely be there, but you cannot just say that I am an I-shaped profile. I know only one thing. I moved to T-shape, and now I think we are talking about pie-shape, which means you have a depth, but then you need to do, kind of know the other things also.
I think it was a fantastic conversation and really enjoyed it discussing with you on the future of wealth management, so to speak. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the podcast, and we'll see you in the next part of the Leadership Retros podcast by StatusNeo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.